Hey, Mitch and Mike podcast listeners, how y'all doing?
Hello.
It's the new year. How about that? I mean, technically right now when we're recording this, it's not the new year. But by the time you listen to this, it's going to be 2025. That's pretty amazing. And to kick off the new year, Mitch, we've got a special friend with us, Mr. Anthony Reece.
Anthony? Do you go by Anthony? I just need to know now.
I go by Lucky and Slim. How y'all doing?
Oh, hey there.
We talk like this the entire show, and then we just piss people off on the whole time.
Howdy, folks.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Mitch likes to do the more refined Southern.
Sometimes, or I get a little extra sometimes too.
You know, I've been
Anthony,
watching that series too much lately. That new Moonshiner, whatever it is. I don't remember where we were at. I think we were on a cruise ship or something a while back, and I started flipping through the 3 channels they give you, and sure enough, it came across that Moonshiner. I had never watched it before, and I was like, "Oh God, this is probably stupid." I actually fell in love with it. It's a pretty funny show, actually.
Really?
But they're down.
I've never heard of Moonshiner.
Appalachian County kind of talk going on, so you know, guess that's where the flashback came from.
Well, it's great to have you on, and one of the reasons we wanted to have Anthony on now, and we'll give a shameless plug now, and then we'll talk more with Anthony about it, but Anthony reached out to us a month or two ago and asked if we would join the VO radio family. And so Mitch and Mike is going to be featured on the weekend, what do you call it, the weekend...
Weekend Power Podcasts.
Weekend Power Podcast.
Nice.
So we will be part of that. VO Radio is Anthony's baby. Anthony's been in the VO biz for a while, and so Anthony, if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to go back to the beginning.
Way back.
We'd like to find out when young Anthony joined the fray and decided, you know what? Voice acting is something I want to try out. How'd you get there? And then how'd you get here from there?
Yeah, it's funny. Long story. We only have how long? 3 hours? Okay.
Yeah.
Fit that window.
Yeah.
It's really funny how it started with me. It's kind of a weird evolution, but I'll try to make it as short as I can. There, I'm back. So that was quick, wasn't it? So
nice.
No, really.
All right. Well, that's our show. Thanks very much for joining.
Thank you for coming.
You guys are great.
No, reality was I grew up down in South Florida, and I was part of the old school 70s South Florida marketplace, which was full of Guidos, what have you.
Quote, unquote.
And because I grew up around that poker world and that casino-y type of world, if you will, I used to crawl around the floor between all the different poker players, if you get my drift, and they would accidentally drop dollar bills. And the only way that I was allowed to keep that dollar bill was if basically I did the da-da-da guy. You remember the old laugh-in or hee-haw or whatever from back in the day? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And every time the box would open, da-da-da-da-da-da. Find it on YouTube.
Is that this guy? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly right. And so in order for me,
I love that.
Whatever age I was, 9 or 8 or whatever I was, to keep that dollar bill and the Stogie's ashes that were dropping all over the floor and the coins that miraculously fell, I had to do some kind of a skit. I had to make them laugh. And they went, I love that. I love that kid. You know, I got another dollar bill. Well, what that did was it planted the seed that, hey, I could get paid to make people laugh. You would think that I would have went the comedy angle, but I actually, instead of went the comedy angle, went the keyboard piano angle. And my stepmother then introduced me to what I thought was, oh my God, only feminine guys play the piano. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I started playing the piano about a year or two later, at the age of like 11 or so, and I was a baseball player. I was a jock, and whenever I wasn't a young jock in Little League, I played the piano, and my father used to take me around to little piano bars where all of his buddies hung out, and they would go, hey, Tony, play that song, we like that song more, or whatever, and I would do more than the ever, and I would play it. I would make another $20, right, out of miraculously. So that put the buzz in me, the entertainment bug in me, aside from my jock stuff, that put the light of the... Well, years later, I was about 13, and I had just started as a freshman in high school. And basically, Elton John was the thing at the time, Billy Joel, and all these guys that were, you know, the early piano player guys.
Yes. Yeah.
And long story short is I learned all their songs because while I was taking lessons learning how to play this thing's terrible, I hope none of my friends know I play piano, girls loved it. And when the girls loved it, I realized, hey, wait a second, I kind of like this center of attraction, getting girls' attention. Long story fast, that's what planted the seed in me. So what happened basically is I ended up getting into the music world, played ball until my early 20s. When I wasn't on the air as a jock, I was a musician playing and touring, went through the headbanging era, got signed and went through the 80s and the days of the Bon Jovis in the world and toured and went out and did the whole thing, keyboard player, and became a quote-unquote rock star, if you want to call it. And along the way, being a DJ on radio at the time, on the old Z-Rock formats and classic rock formats, that created basically me the ability to do voice work at character drops, calling into morning shows and doing basically show prep. And that show prep, because I could do characters pretty well at the time, allowed me to start to get morning shows around the country wanting me to do skits and send them out on a CD and on a cassette at the time. That fast forwarded into what became my musical slash radio career. I started VJing, DJing, and what have you. And then around 90, 91, the hair band day went away. The glam world went away. And the transition to the West Coast with the Green Days and the Nirvanas and the grunge, three-piece grunge bands, bass, guitar, and singer, and, went away. And so we all died a slow death, all of us on these Atlantic record deals. We had nowhere to go.
Except for that sax guy from Lost Boys.
Exactly right.
He's had a resurgence. Yeah.
Is it so true or what? So that's kind of how, in a long way, I became a crazy fool and went in this voiceover stuff. So in about 91, give or take, I walked away pretty much from my musical run, hung up the ball at that time, and was long hair hippie freak at the time, and the only place I could keep my hair whatever I wanted and do my thing was to stay in the rock world somehow. And I got invited to go to Grand Cayman and built this station down there on Z99, called Z99 in Grand Cayman in the Cayman Islands. Built that station, did well with it, spent a couple years there. You can only smoke so much ganja. You can only party with so much Shabba Ranks enough. And, I kind of got bored, I got island fever, and I got bored to death with it. So I moved back to South Florida, Palm Beach, had some money tucked away, and ended up moving to Colorado around 94. And the rest is history. I ended up getting into production, casting, you name it, building radio networks, doing voice work, doing voice casting, doing the whole works. And here I am, 30 years literally to the year later. And that's what brought me this full circle to the madness, so to say. So
wow,
there you go.
That's quite a ride.
Those over, people.
You've touched every single aspect of
right, that's a synopsis for you.
Things I may never even scratch the surface of so far.
The interview's over. I think you know everything you need to know, so you can. But no.
What do you think was your favorite over that span of time, the 30-year time, where you're like, this is so cool, like head in the clouds.
God. All of it, man.
Yeah.
All of it. I mean, it all became a part of. Ongoing life, and I sound like my dad, may he rest in peace now, is literally just your journey, as you guys using your plug, your voiceover journey thing. It's the journey, and it's the small little things along the way that you pick up, you sponge, and you keep with you, you take with you, throw the rest away.
Yeah.
You pick up, you sponge, you throw the rest away. And sooner or later, I got to the point where I had done so much media, broadcasting, radio, TV, VJing, DJing, music, the whole works. Working with clients, working with partners, working with VC venture capitalists, doing the internet, doing .coms, creating evaluations and stuff back in the .com era. Working with the early days of Mark Cuban and the guys at broadcast.com, you name it. I kind of felt that along the way, every one of those things that I may have gone, I hate this, lent something to me and invested something in me that I took with me as I moved forward. So basically, you would think I'd have become a billionaire. Well, the reality was, you can't really in this industry, but the reality was,
what?
I think that's what brought me. Right?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Party's over. But I think along the way, the long short of that answer is not. It can't just be something simple as I think it was that, because there was so much stuff We were just talking about this the other day. I think it was Deb Monroe and me or somebody at the VO team. We're talking about exactly that is along the way, what was the favorite thing? I can't really say there was a favorite thing. I can tell you my biggest regret. My biggest regret is several years into my career, into partnerships, into becoming a production company out here in Colorado. A handful of these guys that were college freaks, that were surfer dudes, that were also skiers in the Aspen Boulder ski resorts that I was pretty well known. Worked for the Miller Brothers, did some video production and character work for them. Turned me on to these 3 burnout college dudes at the time. I thought they're burnouts. And they came to me going, hey, man, we want to let you listen to this cassette of these different characters we've created. We'd like you to get involved in helping us shop it and get some character actors since you do cartoon voices and stuff and be part of this. Well, I was a big shot at the time with partners, right? So I told them, well, I got to be honest with you. I've listened to the cassette, and I think that ultimately what it comes down to is this isn't what they buy out in LA. You got to kind of fit the mold. You got to kind of, well, what we're trying to do is not fit the mold. Well, you got to play the game. I know everything. Long story short, about 2 or 3, maybe 4 years later, my then 9-year-old daughter came to me and goes, Dad, guess what? And I said, what? She goes, you got to see this cartoon I'm watching. And I said, what is it? It's called South Park.
I knew it.
That's what I was.
I knew it. Yeah. That's where my brain was going.
See, so dude, man.
Yeah.
You're right. You just you can't. So that's what I think when I realized, and that would have been what, late 90s maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
That's when I realized, wait a second, you got to step back and reevaluate what they mean by breaking the mold, stepping out of it. I always was a rebel. I always tried to do things differently. But all of a sudden, I let the industry put me in this box. So the talk that I give a lot of my students and a lot of you voiceover talent listening out there is step out of the booth once in a while, man. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Don't be afraid to be a trendsetter. Not follow the trend, but don't be afraid to be the first at doing something in this industry. Because I look back now and I look at this multi-billion-dollar cartoon that's one of the biggest in history, like The Simpsons, and I think to myself, they probably don't remember me. If anything, they'll remember that's the asshole that thought that our stuff was stupid. Right?
You're the fuel that got them to where they're at.
What would you say along the way was your biggest? That was probably my biggest oops.
Okay.
So,
but the rest was all gold. Pretty much.
Oh man!
So
everything helped out, man.
I'm sure Mike and I share this issue. I have trouble living in those moments. Those, you say you soak them up like a sponge, but when I'm in it, I'm kind of just like, what's the next thing? Or like, this is annoying, like you said. What was there ever a time you had trouble with that, or are you always good at living in the moment?
Yeah, I learned that. I think at that point in my career, I started to learn to basically try to look ahead of my father used to tell me
after South Park.
People, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what happened. Okay. My father told me once in his memoirs, or the memoirs that I recorded before he passed for all of us siblings, he said, the thing that's so sad is some people can't look past their nose. And I never understood, what the heck's that supposed to mean? I was 40 years old. Oh, my father... now looking back, I know exactly what he meant. You got to look past your nose. You got to step out of the booth. So, yeah, basically, if you live in the moment, we were just talking about this tonight, actually, on VO Radio, is sometimes on Let's Talk Live, sometimes what happens is we get stuck in the moment that we forget to step out of that moment, like you said, and have foresight and look past what's going on right now. If we are trying to create a moment that we're in, by the time that we learn to do that new delivery, that new style, that new voiceover texture, that new casual sound versus the announcer sound, all the stuff that everybody's juggling around with, right? We're just by the time that we're coached and trained and we're taught and we adapt to it and we learn how to deliver it, it's no longer the flavor of the month. Mm-hmm. So if you're constantly in that moment, you want to be in that moment, but you want to also have your ears and your eyes looking outside the booth window, because you never know the new fashion, the new song, the new music trend, the new everything, the new cartoons, the new commercials, the new advertising angles, the new everything. The trendsetters are the music, fashion, advertising, and content creators in the world. they dictate, and the animators, they dictate the future of where, as voice talent and AI is starting to, we're going to go. So the answer to your question is very insightful for a lot of young talent, even veterans that are reinventing themselves that I work with. A lot of people who are haven't had jobs in years and they're trying to freshen up and reinvent themselves. You got to step away from the old school, this is where you fit. There's no longer a money voice. I hate to say that. You got to be able to deliver whatever the project calls for. So that comes with being in the moment, yes. But while you're not exactly in that moment, look and think past it. Do something different. Create your own USP, as I say. And that is, in the business world, we call it the unique selling proposition. But it's actually your unique sound proposition. What's unique about me? What is different about me? If you're just like every other Tom, Dick, and Harriet out there, you're in that moment. You're stuck in that moment. But if you are willing to step out and take a chance, guarantee you in casting, I listen to them co-cast projects all the time that I don't get credit for, if you will. And the biggest thing that I find is he or she is exactly that in the moment. She sounds just like every other silky sounding female out there that sounds like a mom or the neighbor or, that isn't what they're looking for. What they're looking for is that X factor. What they're looking for is something that's different, that stands out, is what I find. When I hand over the top 10 out of the 50, 70, 80 reviews that I do, I say, here's the 10 that I think you should consider. They always end up picking the one that is the most standout because that person isn't stuck in coming back to that in the moment.
Yeah, and I know I struggle with that sometimes, especially with commercial work, where, it's one thing if I'm creating a character, I can get as nutty as I want to be, and I can, depending on what it's calling for. Sometimes you even get a character spec that's like, subtle and subdued and sounds important and sounds, but I can still play with that and then give the alternate woohoo take. But with commercials, sometimes I get in the booth and I'm like, I want to be me, and I keep hearing that all the time, is you have to be you, and you have to be your authentic self and all that stuff. And then I get in the booth, and I'm like, oh, here's the product, and here I am, talking just like every other white schmo that's auditioning for this thing. And so,
listeners, Mike's white.
Yes, I am.
Right. Sorry.
I don't know if our listeners could tell that. But yes, very much so. So I mean, that's great advice to step out and I'm doing my best to try to create that unique persona. Mitch has got a thing, and I love that about him. My boy Mitch, because he's kind of what is it? You've described it to me before, Mitch. Kind of like that I don't care guy.
It's other people say like cool guy Mitch or Rye or Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, it's just very Midwest wryness to me. Ryan Dry. I'm not sure. I feel like Mike should write it out for me. Really, exactly what he hears. But
it's funny because what you're touching on is something I can hear all of the times I've talked to my students, and I'm starting to sound like my uncle. May he rest in peace too. He was a early 1940s actor out in L.A. He came from Bermuda. But he was a gangster-looking guy, man. I mean, he looked like he walked right off the early Godfathers in the 40s. He had that kind of suave look and everything. But I remember him telling me once when I was a young guy, he goes, you got to remember something. Remember this. Don't you forget about this. Tony. They called me Tony, of course. It wasn't Anthony. It was Tony. Tony. And I said, what's that? And he goes, just get out of the way of yourself. And I never understood what he meant. Get out of the way of yourself. Now, all these years later, when I work with my character actors and students that want to do character voice acting, that's the first thing I explain to them is you got to get out of the way of yourself. You got to get out of your own character's way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Channel the character. Let the character
come through
you.
So
let you carry the life.
And it's so stinking hard sometimes. What you were just saying,
Mike, is it sounds so easy, but it's the number one thing, aside from being able to self-direct and self-coach yourself objectively, and not sound red is the second hardest thing. The third hardest thing as a character actor is letting the character come to life. letting the character become the character, stepping out of the way, going off stage, sit in the back seat, let the character take over the driving of the car, and you're going to find, like you just hit on, Mike, it's really difficult. People don't understand how much work goes into anyway things. So I can do Porky Pig, I can do Bugs Bunny. Sorry, there's already Bob Bergen. There's already, Homer Simpson's already taken care of him. You can't go.
Yeah.
You have to create original stuff. And in order to do that, you have to get out of the way of the character, because that's a weird thing, man. I'm telling you right now, I used to love to sit in, I'm sharing a lot, I'm really getting naked here. I used to love to sit in.
Hey, we do post to YouTube, so please watch that.
I used to love to sit
He's just like,
wait for my staff to go home, wait for partners to go home, 6:30, 6:45, the place was quiet, the lights are half off, and the place was locked up, the alarm system was put on up front. And I knew I wasn't the only one in the building, and I would sit back in the audio room, and I would just dim the lights real low, because I'm a big dim light person about having dim studio, something about it, the creativity. And I used to love to just create a scenario in my head, and I would sit pull up a stool to the mic and go in the booth, and I would sit in there with the light turned down real low, and I would create a scenario, a bus station, and that'd be a scenario, a bunch of men, superhero bathroom, like a web thing, webisode thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I would just literally ad-lib and improvise, and whatever character appeared in my head came from somewhere, I'd let him come forward and talk.
Sound like an only child.
I'm rolling tape. Yeah, I'm rolling tape, as we called it in the day, even though it was a doll or band. I was rolling digital tape. And when I would get done, it was almost like Zach and the boys from Ghost Adventures finding voices they didn't know they caught on the, I would go, what the flip? And I would find some of my best characters would come out of improvising and getting out of the way, letting the characters come through, not having a script, not having a pre-thought out casting directive, ad-libbing. And before I knew it, I'd have a dozen characters that I'd go, how the heck did I come up with that guy? And forward through the years, that's how a lot of my characters evolve. So yeah, get out of the way of yourself is what I tell people in that long half-hour lesson there.
Yeah, gosh, that is great. Mitch and I often talk. We're both kind of, I almost said something really. I almost said we're playing the shower guys, but that's not what I meant. I find myself in the shower, like having those conversations, those made up conversations.
Yes.
As I'm scrubbing my armpits, and all of a sudden his voice comes out, and then I'm doing whatever, and then it's like I get out of the shower and I'm like, where'd that voice go?
Right?
Where'd it come from? Where'd it go? I need
Mando or whatever, right? And there's your wife's Numi or whatever sitting on the thing. So that's funny stuff.
Yeah, I do find sometimes that comes to me in the moment. Those characters, I've gotten out of the way. The character's there, and I'm just on, and it's pouring out of me, like you said. I'm in the back seat. Sometimes it feels like you're in the dark. You're in a dark room, and somebody shows you that door and lets you finally go and do it. I'm getting better about it. I hear my coaches in my head. You might not need that anymore, Anthony, but I have to hear my coaches go like, play, you can be bigger. There's a lot more you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so,
right.
I get that way where, like, when I'm in a workout session, I'm playing hard and I'm going over and above, and my coaches are like, that was great. And you did what? I was in a session with Christina Malizia a couple weeks ago, and I just went balls out, and she's like, I have no notes. That was amazing. Let me get subtle and do the and I'm like, that's great. And then I get in the booth to do an actual audition for animation, which comes rarely, unfortunately. But and then I'm like, I'm too caught up with here's the specs,
right? And
I need to do, and I'm not as I find myself sometimes not being as playful as I can be. And that's where I think I get that hitch. This is like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I need to take a look at the specs of a character and go, all right, I kind of know what they want, but here's what I'm going to give them.
It's exactly
and it's going to be a piece of me.
And that's exactly what I meant by get out of the way of yourself. Thank God my uncle told me that early in my career, because it's a very big thing that I teach a lot of my students at VO 101. I tell them, don't be afraid to get out of the way of themselves. Don't listen to all the old school who want to put you in the booth, who want to put you in the box. Sometimes when you're doing a casting, and it could be something as simple as how you deliver the lines and how you deliver the lines the way the character delivers it. For example, right, the rumor story I heard way back in the day, and I don't know how true it all is, but I had heard this years and years ago, was, what the everything? Yes, you do. How he got the part was not just the voice, but because he had rearranged all the words. And everybody else had been reading the script the way the script was written. So don't be afraid to read the lines, but then improvise the lines how you think your character would say them, right? So that's exactly right. That's one of many things that I've learned and I've sponged from people that I've been coached by on the way up, is don't be afraid to step out, like I said, of the booth, man. It's definitely the difference between getting a gig and just being, next.
Yeah.
We look for that. It's like back in the day in the music industry I was telling you about, I would get Berkeley trained, fantastic writers and guitar players and bass players and the old Jaco Pastorius who I grew up with and stuff. And those guys would come in and they would be shredding circles around these Berkeley trained guys that were educated and taught music theory. And they would come in and be like the stiff playing it by the book. And then you get this long-haired dude that smelled like cigarettes with the shirt unbuttoned. He looked like he was drinking bourbon and smoking crack before he came in. It was shred. And that's the guy that I want on my album. I want the guy who can tear it up and own it. He's playing the same piece off the same score, the sheet we gave him, but he's tearing it apart. He's making his own. Same thing applies when you get a script. Average 7, 8 other men are going to come in, they're going to read it. And they're going to be comfortable, and they're going to be safe, and they're going to read it, and they're going to think about, do I sound like Don LaFontaine, may he rest in peace, or Hal Douglas, or do I sound like... Then they got the other guy that comes in, one or two of the guys who come in, and they got that something going on, and makes us go, wait, man, who, what? Read that again, please.
Yeah.
No, not that way. The way you improvise it. Oh, the way I did it? Okay. So that's a big deal, man. People take too much or not enough liberty. And they're afraid, like you just said, Mike, when they go in the studio, they're afraid to go in there and go against the grain, go against the suit and ties and the round table, and everybody's sitting for the table read and all this. They're afraid to go in there and let your hair down like a hippie freak says and just go at it, man. Worst they can do is laugh and go, okay, thanks, man, appreciate it. Now let's go ahead and read it the way we want you to read it. What'd you really do? You showed them that you can ad-lib. You showed them that you have depth. You showed them that you're not just a mediocre, average, everyday, run-of-the-mill, one-dimensional voice, that you can go in there and you can kick serious ass. So, anyways.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So I should stop being one-dimensional. This is tough.
It is.
I don't have to rework everything.
The one-dimensional can be literally, if you think of this as, you've got, like I teach in my training, 3 shipping containers sitting on the boat dock. The lower container, middle container, and upper container, and then you got the 4th container, depending on your range, right? 3 shipping containers. They're all exactly the same width, the same height, same doors, different colors. That's it. If you are one-dimensional, you're stuck in the middle container your whole career. If you are 3-dimensional, you have lower, a middle, and an upper dimension. Vocally, register-wise, acting performance, you can be on that lower register or that middle register or that upper. If you learn how to work all 3 containers, you're in there. If you are stuck in that middle container, that's the death of most voice actors because they're limited to that one I call one-dimensional sound. Everything they do sounds the same. If you can sit back every Friday and you can listen to that week's auditions, and you can do what I call the staircase effect. And you can go through and you can listen to 5-second clips of the beginning of every audition you did that week. Boom, 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 boom. And every one of them sound uniquely different. You're 3-dimensional. If they all sound like you reading a different read, but it's the same kind of everything, you're in trouble. That's the death of the voice actor. And a lot of people think because they're listening to their quote unquote, and I piss off a lot of people like I do because I'm that black sheep, but agents want your money voice. That's your sound. I only need a 60-second demo. Well, that's because they want 15 other people to be played in that 5 minutes they have with their client. If they want you to sound like this, one-dimensional, you'll never get a job. The only job you're going to get is one that fits that perfectly middle of the shipping container voice that you deliver all the time. The other 85 to 90% of your prospects will hear that one-dimensional sound and go, that guy's wooden. He's limited. Forget it. Next.
I've heard that guy before.
Right. Predictability. For sure.
That's a good way to look at it. I haven't thought about, this is silly now. When I go back and listen to my, I don't know how Mike feels, going back and listening to some of my old auditions, I'm like, even last week, I'm like, I need the new. Like, let's move forward, please. But that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
it
true,
really
man.
does, and just to it adds to, honestly, I mean, that kind of mindset adds to the fun of this, the play around, to not be so rigid, because that's when I get in my head, and that's when I just want to, step out of the booth and throw something through the wall, is when I'm not getting that sound, and I'm recording this thing over and over, and I'm like, that's not any different than the last take I did, because I'm in my head too much, and I'm trying to sound perfect, and I need to remember they're not looking for me to sound perfect. They're looking for me to sound like me in one of those. And I love the fact that you're like, there can be different versions of me.
Absolutely.
And the more versions of me that I have that are authentically me, then the better success I'm going to have.
Absolutely right. When I direct a lot of I do casino gaming for casino companies. I do their casting for the voices in the games, and I've done several projects for Bally and you name it. And we did what was this Sorcerer's Stone or whatever with what's his name, Anderson out of Texas a while ago. We did a couple of them, and that was the thing that I brought to the table that it hadn't got from other casting directors, if you will, or directors, voice directors, was the ability to. I offer every one of my clients 3 takes. So I don't just go take one. How do you like that? Take one. How do you like that? Take one. Okay, that's the one we'll go with. That's the circle take. I say, no matter how many takes we're going to do, and I'll take them until the cows come home, there's at least 3 versions, not just takes, versions like you were just saying. Mm-hmm. It could be something as the voice is lower. It could be something as the voice has more texture. It could be something as the voice is airier. It could be something that has to do with the voice being quicker, slower, the pace being faster. So that when you listen to those 3 takes, or sometimes up to 7, that we finish with finally, every one of them are uniquely different. Hey, get out of there. Hey, get out of there. Hey, get out of there. All 3 different. Bang, bang, bang. That's what you're talking about, Mike. What you're talking about is the ability to wow them over to the point of where they go, I've had them say to me over the years, dude, are you happy? Is everything good? Yeah, but we don't know which ones we want to use now. Well, when you get the cutting and you get the program and you're putting together the final and you're importing it into your software and your program, you're putting on the game, your programs will decide which one they think fits best, and your audio and sound guys. But that's what you want the client to say. You want the client to say, Mike, man, you gave us so much. We really don't know which one to go with now. You've done your job, man. Because now when they come back to you later, man, they're going to go, one thing about that Mike, man, that Mitch, is we get our money's worth, because when they leave, we know we have a shitload of choices. That's what it's all about, the idea of getting out of the way of yourself and giving versatility to people, for sure.
Amen. Amen.
Man.
Good stuff, Anthony.
You got me pumped for when the auditions start coming
I want
back.
an audition now. Let me go.
Yeah, you got any auditions lined up, Anthony?
Yeah,
for us?
hey, throw us
Smash
some,
tonight.
Well, let's pivot with we've got a little bit of time left in this here episode. Let's pivot and talk for a few minutes about VO Radio. We're excited to be a part of it. We're excited for our listeners to start tuning in and to reach a whole new audience, and we're excited about the project itself. So tell us kind of where that started, what you're looking to do with this, and just spend a few minutes talking about it.
Well, we're definitely doing exactly what we had. We had plan 1, quarter 1, plan 2, quarter 2. We're now going into our 3rd year coming up in March, believe it or not. So it's already been 21 months, or 20. Wow, 1 year, 2 years, so give or take, our 3rd year.
Just rolling.
We're in our 2nd year. And the reality is, it's turned out more than we ever expected from a standpoint of it was just a pipe dream. I had a few people at the very beginning haters and all those, and they were just trying to protect me. But I did have a few people that I consider industry leaders I reached out to and gave my idea, and they thought I was out of my mind. You're out of your damn mind. That's so stupid. It'd been done by now. No,
they sound like you with South Park guys.
You have to be a trendsetter. See, you just said it right there. And that's exactly what I shared with one of them. It's funny you say that. I shared that story. And that's why I said, and I will never let that happen to me again. If anybody tells me, ever since then, 25, 30 years, whatever, that I can't, get out of my way. So you'll have to pull me out of here screaming. I used to tell my VCs that back in the day. You'd have to pull me out of here screaming before I'm going to give up on this minicast, this radio, internet radio. I started internet radio before there was one internet radio show in the world. I was the first one. Wow. I created with Jeff Bezos and Amazon the first internet radio show 24/7 on the internet called Action 101. Action 101 was a movie hits type of a show combined with the Internet Movie Database at the time, IMDb. I partnered with a company based out of Boulder, Colorado to do the backbone. They were a broadband company when people were still using dial-ups. So fast forward, I developed a broadcast idea concept to where I had Metallica and other in the MLM industry. I had Herbalife, I had Discovery Toys, I had Amazon, I had Amway, I had all these clients. Once I developed all these radio shows, all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I'm like 5 years ahead of myself, ahead of technology. The only place that I could get listeners was European markets because of the ISDN over there. Broadband had not taken off yet. People were still using dial-up crap. You had to spend $1,800 to have a T1 line put in your home. Nobody could do that. So I realized MP3 was just starting to come around. Real audio was still banging. We had encode in real audio at the time. Mm-hmm. And I realized I was in deep, .com crash happened. My valuation, which was large 7 figures, went away overnight. We woke up in the morning holding all these radio shows, all these platform, all these streaming tools. We didn't know what the frick to do. Lost my butt, lost our asses. Long story short is I had really nowhere to go. So that's when I transitioned from the internet radio, broadcast radio, to full-time Voice Tunes, which I still own to this day. I owned a company at the time called Voice Art. And before the Voice Arts Award existed, I owned Voice Art as my company. And my partners who did not want to sue and foreclose and have a buyout, a liquidation, stood behind and said, what are we going to do? I reverse merge it. Long story short is, fast forward 20 whatever years. In the winter of 2022, an old friend of mine, a radio friend of mine from back in the day, one of my earliest PDs who gave me one of my very first jobs on radio, found me on LinkedIn. And he said, dude, man, I can't believe this, man. We should talk. It's been forever. Well, it's been 20 whatever years. I thought, yeah, okay, whatever. Now, mind you, I had walked away from the broadcast-related stuff about 2004-ish, 2005, give or take at that point, 2003, and put all that radio stuff away. It's all on servers, literally in storage to this day. So he contacted me and said, what did you ever do, man, with that stuff? Blah, 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 blah. He said, oh, man. He goes, so you haven't done, is there anything like this in the voiceover world? And I went, oh, you didn't. And he said, yes, I did. Planted the seed, right?
That idea.
And I went, ugh. I said, damn. He said, I've Googled it, man, and there's no voiceover radio shows, man. So, yes, it's a small market. Yes, it's only about 6,000, 7,000 worldwide. There's maybe 3,000 active, 4,000, but it's a niche market. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I'm going to look into it. November/December, January, I looked into it, did my homework, did my research, and thought, all right, let me give it a try. So I contacted a few people, contacted Nava, contacted Tim and everybody, and told them my idea. They thought I was insane, but it might be a good idea to play with it. February came around, pre-produced the show, got everything ready, got my everything, the libraries and everything together. March kicked in, hand contacted people like Deb Monroe, Mark Rao, a handful of people are still on, and handpicked, like I've done with the podcast thing, handpicked people that I felt had something to offer that were not mainstream accessible everyday convention you go to, they're on the panel. I wanted people that weren't reached all the time. I wanted something that was going to pay it forward. I wanted people who had a heart to pay it forward in the industry, who were not all about the Benjamin, who were not necessarily only about, and I sound a little rude now, but I'm how I am, truthful. And I wanted people that really wanted to give it back and pay it forward and wanted to mentor people, not give a hand out, but give a hand up. And those are the people I originally started with, those 16. We're now up to 35 of us, and basically now I have 12 podcasters that are hopefully going to become the weekend podcast programs. We now are just now implementing what I consider our third-year plan. We're going to be here in March, starting a new plan for the next round. And the ultimate goal for VO Radio is to become a nonprofit, be able to get, I have friends of mine at the University of Arizona who are waiting for our third-year anniversary, and then we are going to apply for government educational grants to help fund VO Radio and be able to give away scholarships and make voiceover, like Tim and them are fighting for at Nava in places, make voiceover become a credible non-journalism degree a field that allow people to potentially get scholarships through VO Radio and our partners, and then be able to take those scholarships and go to professionally, if you will, certified by however we end up figuring that out, coaches, and be able to allow them to utilize VO Radio as a platform to not only train and not only hear what we're doing already so far, but allow them to ultimately find qualified, affordable, good, been there, done that coaches. And that's the ultimate goal that I have as a vision of this thing. Will it ever happen?
You mean that thing that we've all been doing alone?
Yeah.
The thing that we all like are, so how do I know who I'm supposed to give my first couple thousand to?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
it
would be nice to have that.
Yeah. That's ambitious, man, and that's
really kind of the reason that we are letting certain coaches, trainers, mentors, even voice talent that aren't necessarily established household name coaches. They are veteran voice talent. All right, like some coaches that we have, I won't name drop, aren't necessarily coaches. If you go to the site, you don't find a link that says coaching, but they have enough wisdom, School of Hard Knocks knowledge, that they just have to be able to learn how to implement and turn that into how do I share that. And that's what's starting to happen is people are starting to now come to VO Radio, and they're starting to hear these 5 to 7 minute little features, and they're starting to visit the coach's sites. They're starting to hear the Let's Talk Live, and they're starting to learn, like it says, listen, learn, and succeed is our new slogan. They're now able to see that, wait a minute, this is free? Wait a second, what's going on here? What's the catch? There is no catch. Come, listen, learn, succeed, and then come back for more and come back for more. And the ultimate goal is to be able to eventually transition them to where they can come back and they can apply for one of the grants free of charge down the road, or scholarships, and take that fund, quote unquote, and allow them to then take that money and apply it towards whatever coach involved in the broadcast they want to. And they are pre-qualified coaches because we've pre-screened them. We've already tried them. They've already committed. They've already proven themselves ethical, and you now know they've been vetted. Or they wouldn't be on the broadcast. They wouldn't be on the team like you guys and other podcasters are now going to be in this next new part of the team. So that's the long-term plan. So,
well, that's super cool, man. And that as someone who isn't that vet in the biz, knowing that there's just more and more avenues such as VO Radio coming out of Nava, and we got the what is it?
Yep.
Canva is the new Canadian arm of Nava, and just all these things that people are trying to put out there. I mean, our buddy Jim and the Microphone Insider and the scholarships and things that they've been able to do, and it's just really neat to see this industry come together and do these things to try to help others
That's right.
succeed. And so it's
exactly
great.
why we're picking the people that we're picking, like yourselves, who I feel are trendsetters in your own way of doing this stuff. Jim Frank, as you know, is part of our program now. He's on the shows with us, Let's Talk Live, as well as a podcaster and as well as a feature contributor with the Newbie Nation thing that he does now on VO Radio. But that's why Jim Frank was somebody that we wanted to approach after he went to the New England thing with law. And the same thing goes with Deb Monroe, and same thing goes with who else did you mention? Jim Frank, and there was somebody else too that you mentioned. That's exactly why they're involved now. Jim Cooper just came in and audiobook stuff. So we're really excited. Mark Grau was one of my very first people that stepped in and said, "I love this idea. I want to be part of it." And so we invented he created the Voiceover Man, and that's a hugely successful. He gets more listens than almost anybody on any of the features. It's fun. It's comical. It's entertaining. It pokes fun at the industry we all hate to love. But at the same time, he makes us think, he makes us put thought into, okay, it's kind of weird, something like that, AI thing and the Syria thing and Syria, whatever her name was and stuff. So that's exactly what this is all about. So we're definitely hoping that, if worse comes to worse, it stays just a voiceover VO radio thing, and we have this live show once, twice a week, and we do podcasts, and it stays in autopilot, and it just stays out there. So be it. We're going to go for it and have fun with it. And Bev Standing, as you know, is part of this now too, and she's on the board for this new Cava you were just talking about. So we're excited about work. I think what's starting to happen is we're started out as a little train that is starting to slowly go, you know what?
Chug it.
You could do something too. Look at what we've done. We've stepped out of the booth. We've stepped out of the box. You know what, Cava? You can do that. You know what, so-and-so? You might be able to try that. You know what, voiceover journey guys? You can do that. And the reality is, I think people are starting to realize, you know what? There is room for some unique guerrilla marketing concepts within this industry now. It's at the point of where I think people were getting bored with it for a while. That's what I saw. I saw that people were just getting, oh, you're in voiceover? Yeah, my neighbor does that. Sure your neighbor does. They have a microphone they bought at Best Buy. There's a lot more to it than buying a microphone at Amazon, people.
I've actually had when I first started, I had a couple friends go, "Oh yeah, I tried that." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Like, no, they're not doing it now. I wonder what that means. Like, that's a little terrifying.
Their little USB plug-in mic really didn't get him any jobs. All right, well,
awesome.
I think that we've had quite a wonderful conversation with you, Anthony.
We've had fun, Mike.
I'm looking at we're coming up on an hour, and holy smokes, how has it been an hour?
Because I don't know when to shut up. I'm so passionate about this industry that once I get going, like me and Deb always tease each other about, we're basically long-winded. Once we get rolling, man, we look at the show being over and we go, how did this out? The show's almost over? You guys haven't shut up for a minute.
I'm glad we could get you rolling, because there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of
colorful story.
Yeah, great stories and great advice and all the good things. And so as we end the show, just want to give another plug out there to VO Radio. It's voradio.com. You can find us there. You can find a lot of great podcasters.
VO Radio Online.
voradioonline.com. See what I did there? I got that wrong, and I almost screwed our listeners.
I tried to buy voradio.com, and some company over in Britain owns it.
And it's basically
a search engine.
And they wanted
$8,000 to buy it, so we had to go get voradioonline.com is where it's at. So
voradioonline.com. I should know that because I've linked to it on my website, and I've been there several times. So VO Radio Online. Anthony Reece, the co-founder and just an overall great guy. We appreciate you, Anthony, and look forward to working with you for years to come.
We definitely,
Mitch?
and we can't wait to hear your shows and be able to have you guys be part of this weekend's launch on the 4th. So good work.
Yes.
So exciting.
Awesome.
Yes. And
Thanks,
so
guys.
this episode will drop
Thank
on
you.
Thursday, and it's just in time to let everybody know. Oh, go to voradioonline.com and catch all the old shows and catch all the other great VO podcasters and everybody else involved. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having us on, man.
all right.
Happy
Mitch?
New Year.
Yeah, Happy New
That's
Year,
all I have
everybody.
to say to you, freaks. And I love you still.
Hey, thanks,
Yes,
guys.
we-
Appreciate you inviting me on, man.
You bet.
All right.
We
All right.
love
Talk
everybody.
to you
Happy New Year's.
Thanks, man.
Have a wonderful
Let's
2025.
make it as weird as possible.
We try to.
Oh,
It wouldn't be us if it
Christ.
wasn't weird.